Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. Today's episode is called The Pet Man. Most of us find ourselves perpetually behind when it comes to Christmas shopping. In fact, the lead up to the holiday can be the most stressful part for many, but not for 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan. On November 26, 2000, she and her best friend, Sarah Whitehouse, spent the afternoon shopping in downtown Leeds in England. By 5 p.m., Leanne and Sarah had finished and shared a bus ride back to the suburb of Bromley, where they both lived. As they parted ways near Sarah's home, she watched Leanne set off down an unlit path through wooded Hoffley Gill, which served as her shortcut home. Not long after arriving home, Sarah called Leanne's home, but was told she was still out shopping. When she told Leanne's mother, Sharon Hawkhead, that her daughter should have been home by then, Sharon began to worry. When no one had seen or heard from Leanne by 7 p.m., her mother called the police. In the weeks that followed, investigators searched the area and questioned friends and family. The walk home of the girls was reconstructed with the help of Sarah and Leanne's older sister, Michelle, but no clues were found. Leanne's father, Michael, was questioned. He and Leanne's mother were divorced and no longer living together. Investigators were told he was away on holiday at the time of her disappearance, and his alibi checked out. Pleas to the public were made by Sharon and Michael, and several sightings were investigated, but Leanne was nowhere to be found. The area where she lived and disappeared presented some unique challenges to law enforcement, as the area is full of woodland, canals, wells, drainage shafts, and homes. The more police searched, the more they realized that it would take a lot more manpower than they were currently using to continue. More uniformed officers were added, as well as search dogs, mounted officers, and underwater search and rescue teams with air support. In a massive effort, about 800 houses, 1,500 gardens, outbuildings, and sheds in the area were all searched. There was just no sign of Leanne, and the weeks and months began ticking away. In August of 2001, a man walking his dogs in Linley Woods finally found Leanne's body. She was buried in a shallow grave, about 16 miles from where she was believed to have been abducted. When investigators arrived and pulled the floral duvet cover from her remains, they found she had been wrapped in 9 bin liners, or garbage bags, that were tied to her body using twine. A black plastic bag had been placed over her head and secured to her neck with a dog collar. There was also a scarf and zip ties around her neck. The same type of zip ties also bound her wrists. When she was examined by a pathologist, it was found that Leanne had died from strangulation, but her degree of decomposition wasn't consistent with someone who had been buried for 9 months. An expert was called in to examine the cardiac tissue of her heart, and it showed that her body had been subjected to being frozen after her death, until shortly before her remains were buried. Leanne's funeral was held one day after her 17th birthday, on September 28th, at Sanford Methodist Church, which was less than a mile from where she went missing. This was the same church where her and her family would attend and where Leanne was baptized. Her mother, Sharon, sister Michelle, best friend Sarah, and other friends and family joined together to carry her white coffin into the church. At the end of the ceremony, everyone was told to remember Leanne and the loved ones in your life. Quote, "Whatever your memories, cherish them. They are like gifts that no one can take away from you." As Leanne was laid to rest, investigators were hard at work looking at the evidence they had collected and trying to find a new lead. They finally found one in a man named John Taylor. Taylor was known in the area as a poacher, and he had been seen in the same woods where Leanne had been found. Taylor was a parcel delivery worker for Parcel Force, whom everyone considered to be an ordinary man, someone who could be trusted. Locals called him the Pet Man, not just for the pet food he sold, but for all the dogs and ferrets he kept on his property in Bromley. He also lived just over a kilometer or a little over half a mile from Leanne. When investigators looked into his past, they found his only offense to be stealing a suit back when he was 15 years old. When they dug further into his history, what they found concerned them. Former girlfriends claimed that he was heavily into bondage, whips, and ties. Some of those relationships ended because the women's enjoyment of the fetish was no longer mutual, and they had started to feel violated. People who knew Taylor said he talked about the freezers that he kept on his property. One that had previously sat in his home for years had suddenly disappeared around the time Leanne was found, and no one knew what had happened to it. Investigators now had a strong person of interest. The items found with Leanne would provide more critical evidence. First, there was the twine that bound the bags to her remains. That particular twine was used in rabbit netting and was traced back to a supplier in Devon. They produced only one batch. The zip ties were of a type used by the Royal Mail, who was the parent company for Taylor's employer, Parcel Force. The dog collar had been made by Armitage Leather Products in Nottingham. The collars were then sold to a mail-order company called Pet's Pajamas. Only 6 of them had been sold, and one of the customers was John Taylor. There were also fibers found on Leanne's clothes that were traced to a specific pattern of carpet. The scarf that was found around her neck had some small hairs caught in the knot, and while a complete profile could not be built from those samples, they were able to map the mitochondrial DNA, which can be used to trace ancestry through the mother's lineage. Now, investigators needed a sample to see if it was a match. They needed to search Taylor's home. On the property, investigators found the rabbit twine that had been used to bind the bags and more of the zip ties used to bind Leanne's throat and hands. However, the carpet fibers that had been found didn't match what was currently in Taylor's home, so they looked underneath the floorboards and found blood stains. When tested, the stains showed they were from Leanne. The carpet fibers found on her clothes also matched a small sample stuck to a nail in the home. Under questioning, Taylor claimed to have burned the old carpet. They also found a dog collar that matched the one that had been found around Leanne's neck, along with more of the same green garbage bin liners. Finally, when a DNA sample was taken from Taylor, he was shown to be a match for the small hairs found on the scarf. On October 16, 2001, Taylor was arrested on suspicion of murder. Through his answers from interrogations and the evidence investigators found, it was shown that Taylor had encountered Leanne on her walk home on the trail and on impulse kidnapped her and took her to his home. When confronted with the evidence against him at his hearing in July of 2002, Taylor pled guilty to the kidnapping and murder of Leanne and was sentenced to 2 life sentences. Convinced he was responsible for more assaults in the area, investigators ran his DNA in 2003 and found he matched 2 additional cases of rape, one from 1988 and another in 1989. He pled guilty to these as well and received 2 more additional life sentences. After the trial, Leanne's mother Sharon told reporters, "Although John Taylor has been locked up, our agony continues." Lead investigator Detective Superintendent Chris Gregg shared a disturbing theory that police held. They believed that Taylor could be responsible for even more crimes. Quote, "We feel that the way this murder was pre-planned and the way he hid and disposed of the body was calculated. We cannot exclude the possibility he has killed before." And they were right. In 2018, after another cold case review, Taylor was linked to several more cases, all of which took place between 1977 and 1996. He was given another life sentence for these 16 offenses, which were against 5 victims, and he still sits in prison to this day. Police still have other open murder investigations that they feel Taylor is responsible for, but have not been able to link them directly to him yet. One victim's impact statement said, "He is devoid of compassion, exudes evil, and respects no one or nothing but his sick gratification." Case cracked. I would like to thank exploreforensics.co.uk, examinerlive.co.uk, the Yorkshire Evening Post, BBC.com, The Guardian, the Google site The Case of Leanne Tiernan, and The Independent. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case, and here she is to discuss it with us now. Christy, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. A lot of cases that we look into on this show, we're lucky to get one or maybe two links of physical evidence that are strong, but this case has a lot, and it looks like your research actually showed there was another interesting DNA link investigators were trying to develop. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and I really wish I could have included it in there, but you'll see why. They found dog hairs on Leanne's body, as well as the human hairs that they found. Those turned out, those were sent to scientists in Texas who actually produced a partial dog DNA profile. And it was the first time in a British murder investigation that they had used dog DNA profiling.
Wow. Wow.
Now, however,
yeah,
the dog was dead at this time, so they couldn't enter it into evidence at the trial.
Okay.
So now here comes the sad part. While investigating his backyard, police found the bones of a small dog and a crushed skull. They said later that they believed Taylor killed the dog to stop them from identifying him with the dog hairs.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Terrible. Heck of a thing for the pet man to supposedly do. Yeah.
And see, I was surprised by that too, because I knew that there had been some reports that he tortured animals.
Oh, really?
But then he was allowed to have all of these animals. He had all the pet food. People came to him for all of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
With this being a case from 20 years ago, I wasn't sure if cell phones would really come into play. You know, it's right at kind of that breaking point, especially for someone younger to have one. But you found that Leanne did indeed have one. Was there anything helpful about that, or?
Well, and this was something else that I left out of the script because I couldn't reconcile it.
Okay.
Her mother, her mother called her cell phone to see where her daughter was when she was late. The first time she called, the call was denied. After that, it just acted like it had been shut off. I didn't find anywhere that it was ever found. I didn't find that they used any cell phone pings or anything like that to find her whereabouts. And with it being in its infancy, they might not have been able to do that yet, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we definitely noticed a trend out here of different departments kind of taking to that technology in different ways over the years. You know, like some bigger departments, they got to it kind of quick. Some of the smaller departments out here in the US, you know, it took them some time to realize what that was as an investigative tool. But that's actually an interesting story about the first call being denied. Almost makes me think of a situation of like, did he not realize that she had a phone on her, and then it rings, and then he finds it and then denies the call and then shuts it off from there. Yeah.
That was the thought I had too.
Yeah. I think that one of the most terrifying aspects about this case is hearing that they uncovered an extensive criminal past like this. This guy is active, criminally active, for at least 25 years before this occurrence. And then this is the thing where like the house of cards just falls down. It's crazy.
Yeah. One of the things that bothered me the most, you know, police definitely think that there are more people out there. When they searched the trunk of his car, they found a necklace in there that doesn't fit with any investigation that they have open for him at the moment. So nobody even knows who that belongs to.
Yeah. Here's a picture of the necklace. We're going to put it up, and pretty clear that, I don't know, that looks like a young lady's necklace to me. Yeah. Wow. Who knows? But it's one of those things at this point, how many life sentences can this guy get? I mean, he's not going anywhere, but
that's true.
Still answers for families, justice for families. And if there's,
it's everything.
Who knows if there's another body out there and someone doesn't know where their loved one is. I don't know. Maybe there's still a good avenue that can happen through this investigation. Christy, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and hard work on this. And we've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters Angela Welch Sola, Sandy Reed, and Sandra Mengel. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Laura Vargas and Miss L recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover. We really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and remember to subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon below if you'd like to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new unsolved mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.